this is Lisa from Life in Layouts, and I am back for my third layout for Mini Kit Monday of August 2020. Again, I'm using the Scrapbook Generations whole picture, and it is paid content sketchbook, so I cannot show you the sketch, but I can tell you that this sketch is a fun one. The sketch calls for 4 of the photos to be at the very bottom of the layout, which is how I add them. And then it calls for some squares. Now the squares on the layouts are a little bit different than what I end up doing, because I do want to use one of my square dies, and I really like this die because it is called the dotted die, I believe, and it has little dots on the edge, hence the name, the dotted die. So I know that there's a couple of different ones out there. There's like the stitch die and I think another one, but I really like the way that this looks. So once I get all of the squares cut out, it does call for a 1/4 inch strip above the photos. Now the layout itself calls for these squares, and the squares are on an angle, so it does make it difficult to lay down. And the suggestion was to use a yardstick to make sure that the squares were straight, which when I got about halfway through the layout and adding these squares down, I realized why I needed a yardstick and not just a T-square ruler. But I do end up making it work. Now, some of the squares do get cut off on the edge, so it does make it look like a continuous square across. And I started where I thought was the center, and it actually ended up not being the center on the right-hand side, but I'm okay with that. Now, the sketch, I'm not sure if it calls for them to be like this or if it calls for them to line directly up, but I do love the way that it looks, where they're kind of halfway between each square on top and bottom of the squares on the center strip there. Once I get a majority of the big pieces down, basically the ones that are true squares, that's when it becomes really tricky, is trying to find squares that will fit, as well as making sure that the patterns don't overlap or are close to each other. And then I also didn't want the colors to be close to each other. So even though I have that yellow arrow paper in the middle, I have another yellow paper with the anchors on it, but I didn't want them to be close to each other. And so it was painstaking trying to get these squares down, but I finally got them down. So I did want to mount this picture on white cardstock just because there's so much going on, and I decided to just use one of the backs of the 6x6 pieces of paper because I was getting close to finishing and I wanted to try to make sure that I was able to get all of the paper used up. So I knew that I had a couple of the stripes papers, and I went ahead and used that. So I'm trying to figure out what to do with this photo. Now the sketch does call for 2 photos over here on the right hand side, and I didn't have 2 photos for my layout, so I thought maybe I could use one of the 4x6 cards, but the only 4x6 card that there was in the wrong orientation for that. Then I thought I would just use a white piece and use that. I didn't like the way that that looked. Then I tried to pull out this banner strip. Didn't like the way that that looked. So I just went with one photo. And I actually like the way that it turns out because it really does show a lot of that background that I spent so much time working on. I do edge some of the papers with my faded jeans simply because the paper is white core, so when you do cut into it, especially like the circle pieces, because my circle punches could definitely use a good sharpening, it does show a little bit of white, so I just used it where the white was showing and I didn't want it to peek through. I cut out the circle that says set sail, and then I also get to use that compass that I tried to get used in the last layout. I finally get it on a layout. And then I also used this little circle here, which is a 2-inch circle that is yellow, and it has little sailboats, anchors, and ship wheels on it. I went ahead and used the wood veneer camera to add to that cluster as well. I decided to go ahead and fill in some of the squares with additional clusters as well, because this really isn't a layout that you can have a triangle of clusters. So I was just kind of filling in the squares that were simple or had simple backgrounds. I added that red ship wheel to the yellow anchor paper. I added the navy anchor to the star paper. And then I go ahead and add this little square that says cruising along to that navy paper that has the swirls on it. Now, I do go ahead and add some of the final pieces off camera. So I used that wood veneer that says memory, and that's up there by the ship. And I also went ahead and added a little heart to the center of that ship wheel, and then added some little rhinestones to the cluster on the left as well as the one on the right. So here is my final layout as well as some close-ups. I would love for you guys to go and check out the Mini Kit Monday Facebook group. There's lots of inspiration over there, and anyone can join the group. So if you have a collection that you want to create, you can do that. All right, everyone, if you enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already and you want to see more double page inspiration, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because that's all you're going to get on my channel. Thanks everyone for watching, and I hope that you have a scrappy day.